So go Sabres. Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline. We're going to get the Bills preview. Sal, what about you? Thoughts on 05-06 and the Sabres? Are you in Florida for those years?
I was. I told the story to Joe last night, so I was really dialed in. It was great. It was awesome. I came up here. I was in Florida for the Cup run in '99. I came up here, and I was at the game they won. That would have been Game 4, right, at home here. So I was at that game. And then down in Florida still, 6, 7 years later. And I will tell you, though, what happened was we had planned a trip to Europe. And at the time, you're like, okay, when are we going to go? And it happened to just coincide with basically Game 6. I was in the air during Game 6. I did not see the overtime goal. I did not see Game 6.
Yeah.
And we got to I don't remember, we were London maybe. I can't remember. We had a layover before Germany. And I had to call. This is before like true smartphones are today, you guys know. And I actually had my buddy, I said, you got to call my phone and leave me a message on my phone. I don't know my service. So I could call and get like the update. As soon as I landed, I kind of called my own phone to get my own voicemail, if you will. And he would leave me a voicemail. I said, you got to do that. Then I found out they're going to Game 7. And then because I was in Europe, and whatever the time would have been, overnight or early morning, I couldn't find the game on anywhere. I mean, that was, I don't know. Maybe I'm sure there's some sports bar had it at night, but it wasn't. The time didn't match up. I did not watch Game 7, and I just had to kind of find it somehow, like the score online, and then so I never actually watched Game 7. And thank goodness, because obviously I know it was very heartbreaking. It was a great year. Obviously, it was awesome to watch that team. I was at an event the night Briere scored in double overtime against Philly with the school and teachers and coaches, a fundraiser. And Jeremy, we've talked about this, like being at a wedding, and you guys, Joe, we've talked about this. You have a wedding, but when you're at a wedding and something's going on in a sports game and people want to watch it, right?
Yeah.
This was it. This was a fundraiser for me, and I'm the dude. I need to watch this hockey game that's going on. I know we got this big fundraiser. Everybody's dancing. We're trying to raise money. There's an auction going on, and I'm trying to find it. And I remember that night very clearly.
A tradition unlike any other, trying to make sure you can see the game.
Yes.
At an event that requires you to be proper.
And Sal told me that you would call a service to tell you sports scores.
There used to be that as well. Yes. Now in this one, when I was telling the story,
what were you people doing back then?
Yeah. So when I was telling the story to Joe, Tim Graham said that, but this wasn't the case. This particular night, I actually called my buddy, left me a voicemail. But yes, that is the case, Joe.
It's insane.
We used to back in the day. Joe, okay. Jeremy, are you old enough to remember weather lines we used to call?
I don't know.
You would call for the weather?
You'd call a number for the weather in the morning. You'd pick up your regular phone with the dial tone, and you'd call a number and find out what the weather would be that day.
I'm old enough to remember, and Joe, you might know this from Seinfeld. You used to call a phone number to find out the movie times.
Oh, of course that. Yeah, I know
that.
Like what time it's a movie.
Welcome to movie phone.
Right.
Yeah,
that used to be a thing.
So everything was like that with score. Yeah, sports scores all the time. I mean, you guys know. I mean, now you have radio ads and stuff, but it was calling these numbers, and they would have these gambling ads and things like that. But you would call these sports lines and sports scores. Horse racing didn't matter. Weather didn't matter. Movie. That's the world we lived in.
Yeah. Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline. It's reunion night for the Sabres. They'll play the Montreal Canadiens at KeyBank Center. All right, Sal, on to the injury report. The Barnes Firm Injury Report, brought to you by the Barnes Firm. Injured call, 1-800-8-million. The number one name I'm watching here, because I feel like we have a couple of players we expected to be out, and then we have a couple of players we'd hoped would make progress. And Ty Johnson has missed a second consecutive day of practice, so it is potentially not looking good for Ty Johnson.
I agree with that. Last week, even, I was holding out hope when he had 2 days of practice, and I think he actually got to limited on the last day, but he never made it, be able to play in the game. And you have a shorter week here, but I figured, okay, maybe another week you get Ty Johnson back in, and just hasn't happened this week. And with the short week, you wonder. Now, obviously, Ty Johnson could just kind of seamlessly go in and be a part of the game plan. But there is something to be said for practicing and game plan and reps and, understanding everything, especially against a team like this that's going to bring pressure and get after the quarterback, So I think at this point, we'll find out from Sean McDermott today, but hasn't looked good for 2 days for Ty Johnson.
Yeah. Meanwhile, at safety, this might be the biggest who's going to be there kind of thing, because with no Jordan Poyer, DeMar Hamlin is close to a return, and you've got Jordan Hancock and Cam Lewis. What would you expect the Bills to ultimately decide to do?
It's a great question. Matt Bove and I really talked about this yesterday on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. People can hear the podcast because we go a little bit more in depth on this, but the basic, Cliff's notes for me is I think the Bills have generally operated where they feel comfortable having somebody back there with communication that understands exactly what, needs to be done on a play-to-play basis. And I think last week they lost a little bit of that when Jordan Poyer went out and Jordan Hancock went in. So you can look at it one of two ways. To me, you could say, okay, Jordan Hancock gets a full week of reps. He's going to be better in that situation. And I could understand that. I think Cam Lewis, though, has done a really nice job when he's had to fill in there. And I think he would very well, be a guy you could turn to here. The problem is, if you do that, you might be losing your dime safety in those situations because Cam's got to play regular safety. But you also have Darnell Savage on the roster now. Let's not forget him. And then when it comes to Damar Hamlin, that's just the X factor here for me. Like, does this team trust right away to put Damar back there where he did start last year? He started against this team in the playoffs last year. And he gives you a certain floor, but man, he has not played in a while, right? There's a time on task. I do think Damar, though, would help on special teams and have him activated, especially with the loss of Shavers now.
Yeah, and would they also look at, Sal, like who's played with Bishop and who has experience with him? I mean, Hamlin would have done that last year, but really not much this year. Like maybe you would think actually, well, I guess Hancock and Lewis might be close in terms of like guys that have experience with Bishop.
Somebody asked Cole Bishop yesterday if he realized he's played next to 5 different safeties this year. And I'm like, oh, wow, I guess I didn't realize that. I have to go back and look. And maybe it's going back to last year, right? I'm not really sure. Maybe that was it because he's only in his second year. But he said he didn't know the number. And he said, as long as you do your preparation, as long as you work, it doesn't impact it as much as a lot of people might think, right? The communication, because everybody understands what they're supposed to do. So yeah, I do think, Joe, that to Sean McDermott, it's very important, right? We know that. But Damar and Cole, they were together a lot last year, whether it was, in practice or during games later in the year when Cole got a little more time. So it wouldn't stun me to see Damar playing safety. I just don't know if this is a spot where you can do that right now, given what's already on your roster and the guys that you have available to you.
Sal Capaccio. Speaking of Bishop, Sal, he's one of the players the Bills have that has extensive experience playing at altitude.
That's right. I asked him about it yesterday. And I didn't know, and I didn't want to be I don't think it's geology expert, maybe? I don't know. What would be the term there?
Geology. Right?
Altitudologist, a topologist.
Oh, okay, there
How
you
about a topologist, right?
Yeah.
Topography? I don't know.
My mom would tell me I have a tude when I grow up. I think she meant attitude, though, not altitude. So I would say, I asked him, though, I said, I would guess that Utah, you would have played in, higher altitude. And he said, yes, he did. And he said, yeah, it can definitely, impact you at times, right? But you just have to make sure you're prepared, know where the oxygen is. And, as the game goes on, you could get a little tired if you don't, prepare yourself properly. A lot of the guys are talking like that this week. Deion Dawkins talked about an altitude chamber they have at the practice and training facility. And you get on the treadmill, you go in the altitude chamber. Josh Allen played at an altitude of higher than Mile High, 2,000 feet higher, the highest altitude you could play in, I believe, in college football at Laramie, Wyoming. And he basically said, look, I think I'm gonna paraphrase. It's kind of like mind over matter. Like you don't think or talk about it, you just prepare for it and you go out there and you do it.
Right, yeah, Laramie, Wyoming, Sal. It's if you include NFL, FBS, and FCS, he played, Allen did, in the highest elevation stadium you can play in. And by 2,000 feet over Denver, by the way.
It is amazing. And I get it. Like, again, I'm not a medical expert here, but I have people telling me about this and that, and lots of Twitter experts telling you all about it. And I know some people have experience, some people don't. And the general gist I get from a lot of people, though, is if you've lived out there, and that's what Cole said. He's like, look, I lived out there, right? But now I haven't been there in a while. And that's the thing, too. If you live out there and you leave, and then it's probably different for everybody if you just play once in a while. But, guys, I mean, Green Bay went out there. Jacksonville went out there, right? I mean, you look at some of the teams that actually had some success going out to Denver this year and playing. It's a football game, and it's just going to come down to that. I don't think it's going to come down to the altitude, but you certainly have to be prepared.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline chatting about Bills Broncos with us. Sal, for storylines going into this game, I don't know. I feel like you're getting a big sense that Denver knows the challenge ahead of them. It's one of these things where you're not sneaking up on anybody, I want to say, if you're the Bills. You might be a 6 seed, but any team walking in with Josh Allen is not going to sneak up on anybody. They do know the challenge ahead of them, and I feel like whether it's the Denver media or the Denver coaches, I saw Vance Joseph, a clip from him talking about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson as dream wreckers. Joseph knows the challenge that's ahead of his defense, and, the Denver defense, we'll see if they're up for it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. They know. You talk to anybody in the media. Speaking of the podcast, people are people can listen today. We actually had Mark Schlereth on, and Mark obviously played for the Denver Broncos, and Matt and I interviewed him yesterday. That's going to drop today. And even he loves his Broncos. He really does, right? He played in that city. He's going to be an ambassador to the team on Saturday at the game. And even he's like, look, people say this might be the worst one seed in a while, and maybe it is, but they do this right and that right, but they also haven't been playing well here. And I think there's a sense of, I think as compared to last week, I'll say this, I know that they were really feeling themselves, the Jacksonville Jaguars fans and media, and how well they were playing. No doubt about it. And they had every right to be confident. But I felt they were really overconfident, and just thought they could just beat anybody because they're just steamrolling people right now. I think there's a sense of reality with the Denver Broncos fans and media of, yeah, we can be good. We also know that we're not this world-beating team, and the Bills can come in here and they can beat us as well. I do think that there's that sense coming out.
And a lot of that, Sal, I think, is just their offense, right? How many games this year can you really look at and say, wow, they were amazing? How Bo Nix really took over a game. Most of the games they won were close games where their defense was the one that was carrying them.
It's interesting you say that, Joe. I thought about their last 3 games. If you look at their scores, right, they have not broken 20 points in their last 3 games. They scored 20 against Jacksonville, 20 against Kansas City, against the Kansas City team was playing kind of a JV team, right? I mean, remember that night game,
right?
And Christmas, they were already out of it, right? They started what was the quarterback's name for Kansas City?
Olajuwon.
Olajuwon, yeah, right? And they scored 20 points in that game, and then they scored 20 against the Chargers, who started Trey Lance. Now, I know that's offensive side, but, they certainly haven't been playing their best football. However, they've had 2 weeks here. They're going to get in the lab, and they're going to practice and figure out what has been going wrong. So rest versus rust is interesting with this particular team to me because, yes, they haven't been playing well, and they have an opportunity to kind of get back in the lab, practice, figure it out. But they also haven't had games to do this to try and get back on track.
Yeah, that's right. They don't have a test. And Sean Payton might be a coach you would trust to find answers on that because he's been around a long time and he's an offensive guy. I wonder just how confident you would be, though, that they would, even with that prep, find solutions on offense when, I don't know, they just don't really have a lot of high-level talent. If you had, if the Eagles had a bye week because they have A.J. Brown and Smith and Barkley and Goddard, and you want to say a week could help them figure out how to utilize all that, maybe that'd be the case. Denver, what are they really trying to get more out of? R.J. Harvey and Evan Ingram? They don't have these high talent level guys on that side of the ball.
I'll tell you, I agree with that. I think that what they would do, though, is look for other solutions. I wouldn't be surprised if Jaleel McLaughlin gets a bigger role in this game, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think they look and go, okay, what can we hit the Bills with that maybe they haven't seen as much? What can we do to energize our offense a little bit? Here's Jaleel McLaughlin, who actually has a nice high yards per carry. I know they
He's fast. Yeah.
rely more on R.J. Harvey. He's an explosive guy. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Marvin Mims or Franklin become a little bit more of the game plan than what they've had lately. And I know Franklin already is a guy they throw to, but maybe it's not as much Sutton. You know what I mean? And I think that's it. Remember last year they came here, what'd they do? Faked a punt, right? I mean, this is what you're getting from Sean Payton this week. He is going to have something planned in 2 weeks that he has been cooking up and waiting because – I mean, this is a guy that ran you can't do this anymore, obviously.
Surprise onside kick.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
that's
just
right.
thinking that. When you said he's cooking something up, he is that guy.
He is that guy. He's going to do this. There's going to be something they're going to do. And if you guys remember last year, smart by him. What happened to that fake punt? Who did he target? What did they do? They targeted Jamarcus Ingram. You know what was interesting about Jamarcus Ingram that week? He missed 2 days of practice because he had personal reasons. I believe that he had a child. And I'm saying, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going through the roster and going, okay, who hasn't had the time on task this week, this month, this year that I can take advantage of that hasn't seen something on film? That's what Sean Payton is doing this week to gain maybe that little extra edge.
Yeah. Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. All right, Sal, so 10 o'clock today, Northtown Automotive Extra Point Show. And are you doing Pat Hammer, too? We doing Denver weather?
And McDermott today, right?
McDermott. I knew McDermott.
We're doing it all, baby.
Okay.
We're doing it all. We're
right.
making it a Buffalo Football Friday and a Thursday, and we're going to have Paul Hamilton, obviously, today because we'll talk a little hockey as well because last night, obviously, a big win for the Sabres. Tonight, big night tonight. I'll be there as well. I'm so glad we live in the YouTube age where my son Max knows about that team. He knows about Max Afinogenov. He knows about Ryan Miller. He loves watching the Max goal sliding across the ice in '07, right? That kind of thing. So I'm bringing Max to the game tonight. It's going to be awesome. Paul's going to be on with us at 10:30. Sean McDermott a little after 11 a.m. And then Pat Hammer with Denver weather at 11:30.
Very good. Thanks, Sal.
You got it.
Sal Capaccio on the Bills and Broncos. And there's your schedule for the Northtown Automotive Extra Point Show.